The great training dome of Valkyrie Station was loud and alive, filled with echoes of boots, weapons, and voices from many worlds, and it stood as a symbol of power where the Galactic Defense Coalition trained its soldiers to face the worst threats in the galaxy. Yet beneath all the noise and confidence there was tension, because everyone knew the Zaleth Dominion was expanding and war was only a matter of time. And among the many recruits gathered that day stood a human woman named Mara Hale, quiet and still. Her posture calm while others stretched, boasted, or showed off their advanced gear. And what truly drew attention was the rifle she carried, long and heavy, made of dark metal, without glowing coils or humming energy, looking old and simple compared to the bright plasma weapons around her. And the moment other recruits noticed it, laughter spread through the hall, sharp and mocking, as alien soldiers whispered and joked, calling it weak, outdated, and useless in modern war. And some humans avoided looking at her, embarrassed by the strange weapon she carried, while a tall Korathi trooper openly laughed and said it belonged in a museum, and a Virexian with 4 eyes sneered that humans were backward if they still used such tools. Yet Mara did not answer them or show anger. She simply checked her rifle with steady hands, adjusted the strap, and focused on her breathing, because she had learned long ago that noise wasted energy and patience won battles. And high above them all, Commander Rathkel watched silently from the platform, his scarred face showing no emotion, though his sharp eyes noticed how the human stood apart from the rest, calm in a room full of pride. And when the training exercise began, the dome filled with flashing lights as drones burst from hidden panels, moving fast and changing direction without warning. And plasma fire exploded across the space as recruits fired wildly, some hitting targets, others missing, their weapons overheating or losing charge, while cheers and curses echoed together. And through it all Mara waited, not rushing, not firing, letting the chaos settle before she raised her rifle, took aim, and fired a single shot that cracked through the air with a sharp sound unlike the hum of plasma. And a drone fell instantly, its core destroyed, and then she fired again, and another target dropped. Clean and precise, each shot placed with care, her movements slow and smooth as she shifted position, reloaded, and breathed, ignoring the stares around her as laughter faded into uneasy silence. And while others struggled to track the fast-moving drones, Mara seemed to see paths others could not, predicting motion, choosing moments, and when the final target appeared far across the dome, almost invisible, even the best alien optics failed to lock onto it, but Mara adjusted her scope, steadied herself, and fired once more, and the distant drone shattered into fragments, leaving the dome quiet except for the hum of cooling systems, and that silence carried weight, because it forced everyone to look again at the human with the old rifle, and it was broken only when Commander Rathkel leaned toward his aide and spoke softly. Yet his words carried, saying that the weapon she chose was one only true snipers understood. And that quiet comment changed the way the room felt, turning mockery into respect. But before anyone could speak or react further, warning lights flared red and alarms screamed through the station, cutting through the moment like a blade, and training ended not with dismissal orders but with fear as the announcement came that unknown ships had entered the system. And screams across the dome lit up with images of jagged black vessels tearing through space, marked with the symbols of the Zaleth Dominion, the enemy known for burning worlds and leaving nothing behind. And panic spread as recruits realized this was not practice but real war. And officers shouted orders while shields powered up and bulkheads sealed. And Mara tightened her grip on the rifle as the station shook from distant explosions, her face calm even as the sky beyond the metal walls filled with fire, because she understood something many did not yet grasp, that the laughter, the training, and the tests had all been preparation for this moment. And as Valkyrie Station faced the first of invasion, the quiet human with the strange rifle stood ready, knowing the galaxy was about to learn why patience, precision, and human were far deadlier than bright weapons and loud confidence. The moment the alarms rang across Valkyrie Station, the mood changed from pride to fear, and space outside the massive structure turned into a field of fire as the Zaleth Dominion fleet poured out of hyperspace like a dark storm. Their ships sharp and alive, covered in red lights that pulsed like angry hearts. And before the station's defenses could fully respond, beams of energy struck the outer platforms, tearing them apart in bright explosions that sent metal and bodies spinning into the void. While inside the station, sirens screamed and lights flashed red as soldiers ran through corridors that shook with every impact. And commanders shouted orders over broken comms, trying to turn a place meant for training into a battlefield. And Mara Hale moved with her assigned unit through narrow halls toward the outer defense ring, her boots steady even as the walls trembled. And around her were soldiers from many species, some breathing fast, some praying in strange ways, some shouting in anger to hide their fear. And the first breach came without warning as a Zaleth boarding pod slammed through the hull, tearing open steel like paper and spilling enemy soldiers into the corridor, tall and terrifying with bone armor and burning weapons. And the fight became close and brutal as plasma fire filled the air, burning marks into walls and bodies alike, and many recruits froze or fired wildly. But Mara climbed onto broken cover and raised her rifle, her mind calm as she searched for leaders and threats. And when she fired, the sound was sharp and final, and an enemy officer dropped instantly, pierced through a weak point others never noticed. And as the Zaleth pushed forward, she kept firing, moving slowly between shots, never wasting a single round, and her kills created space, giving her unit room to breathe and fight back. And the aliens around her began to notice that wherever the human aimed, enemies fell before they could even return fire. And a Varexian soldier shouted in surprise when he saw Zaleth's shields fail against her bullets, realizing too late that energy barriers meant nothing to solid force and careful aim. And deeper in the station, the battle grew worse as more boarding parties arrived and fires spread. While outside, the coalition fleet struggled against overwhelming numbers, ships exploding in silent flashes as the enemy pressed closer. And news spread quickly through damaged channels that the station's reactor had been hit, power dropping and evacuation plans forming. And then came the most terrible message of all, that a Zaleth command vessel known as a Dreadmind had entered the fight, a massive ship that controlled the enemy fleet through a living core brain. And it began charging a weapon strong enough to break stations and crack planets. And fear turned into despair as officers realized that if the Dreadmind fired, Valkyrie Station would be erased along with everyone inside. And the only hope was a desperate plan to send a small strike team to board the command ship and destroy the core brain directly. A mission so dangerous that few expected to return. And Commander Rathkel searched the room as the plan formed, his eyes settling on Mara, because she had already proven she could see what others missed and strike where it mattered most. And when he asked her to join the team, she agreed without hesitation, not because she thought she would survive, but because she understood that sometimes victory demanded a single steady hand instead of many loud ones. And the boarding craft launched into space under heavy fire, shaking violently as enemy weapons tore into its hull. And before it even reached the Dreadmind, half the team was lost, their sacrifice buying just enough time for the rest to breach the enemy ship. And inside the Dreadmind, the walls pulsed and shifted as if alive, the air thick and heavy. And the remaining soldiers fought through defenders that seemed endless, every step costing blood and strength. And Mara moved behind them, covering angles, dropping enemies before they could strike, even as her armor cracked and her hands trembled from exhaustion. And when they finally reached the central chamber, They saw the core brain suspended within layers of glowing shields, massive and terrible, guarded by elite Zalith warriors who moved with deadly purpose. And the team tried to push forward, but were forced back again and again, their weapons failing against the defenses. And one by one they fell until only a few remained wounded and fading. And Mara climbed what was left of a shattered structure inside the chamber, ignoring pain as she found a narrow angle that others could not reach. And there she lay flat, her rifle damaged and nearly useless, with only one round left. And as the Dreadmind's weapon neared full charge and the station faced destruction, she took a slow breath, remembering the lessons of patience and focus that humans had learned through long struggle. And in that moment, amid chaos and loss, she prepared to place one final shot that would decide the fate of everyone still fighting, holding the line not with power or numbers, but with calm resolve and the quiet strength that had once been mocked. The boarding craft carrying Mara, Holly, and the few remaining soldiers shuddered as it crossed the void toward the Dreadmind command ship, battered by enemy fire that tore holes in its hull. And as pieces of metal floated past the viewport, the remaining team gritted their teeth and held their positions, knowing that each second brought them closer to either victory or death. And already, half of their comrades had been lost to space or to the Zaleth boarding forces, leaving only a handful to continue the impossible mission. But Mara moved with calm determination, adjusting her rifle and checking her few remaining rounds, knowing that patience, not panic, would be their only weapon against a foe designed to overwhelm. And as the craft docked, alarms screamed and lights flickered, signaling breaches across the ship, and the smell of burning circuits mixed with the faint tang of alien bioorganic material, creating an atmosphere of tension and fear that pressed on the lungs of every human and alien soldier in the team. Yet Mara remained focused, scanning the corridors and planning each step before moving, knowing that one wrong move could cost them everything. And they entered the Dreadmind's interior to find hallways that twisted unnaturally, walls that pulsed with life, and floors that seemed to respond to their weight, as though the ship itself were alive and hostile. And Zaleth soldiers moved silently, deadly, striking without warning. And the team was forced to split, retreat, and regroup as the alien defenders pressed in from all directions. And Mara's rifle was her only tool to create space, each shot precise and deadly, dropping enemies before they could react. And as they fought deeper, the corridors became tighter, forcing Mara to rely on positioning, angles, and timing, because brute force alone would not overcome the Dreadmind's defenses. And finally, after relentless struggle, explosions, and sacrifices, they reached the core chamber where the Dreadmind's central brain floated, immense and terrible, surrounded by glowing shields and elite guardians who attacked with ferocity. And the room seemed alive, breathing and pulsing, reacting to their presence, and the remaining soldiers tried to push forward but were cut down one by one, leaving Mara alone, exhausted, armor cracked, hands shaking from fatigue and injury, yet still determined. Knowing that the fate of Valkyrie Station rested on her next actions, and she climbed the broken remains of a central platform to find a narrow path that gave her a clear line of sight to the core, the only angle from which her rifle could reach the heart of the Dreadmind's defenses. And with a single round left, she steadied herself, slowed her breathing, adjusted for distance, gravity, and shield interference, and recalled the countless hours of training, the lessons humans had learned over generations about patience, focus, and ingenuity, understanding that while other species relied on raw power or advanced technology, humans had survived by thinking, observing, and striking when the moment was perfect. And as the Dreadmind began to charge its planet-breaking weapon, the entire station trembling in anticipation of annihilation, Mara squeezed the trigger. and the round flew, silent yet unstoppable, cutting through the energy shields at a precise frequency, piercing the core brain, and the ship screamed, a living sound of rage and destruction as the dread mind convulsed, systems failing, the shields flickering, and alarms wailing before all went silent, leaving only the shaking metal and the fading echoes of what had been a nightmare of war. And across the void, Zalith ships faltered, losing coordination without the guidance of their command ship, and coalition forces rallied. Ships that had been retreating now surged forward, striking the disorganized enemy, turning defeat into victory, and Valkyrie Station, though damaged, survived, its remaining crew and soldiers breathing heavily, stunned by the sudden turn of events. And hours later, Mara was found unconscious, bloodied but alive, a quiet hero whose patience and skill had saved millions. And when the council gathered for the victory ceremony, Commander Rathkel addressed the assembly, reminding everyone that the human with the mocked rifle had shown the truth about their species, that humans did not fight for show or for flashy power, but for survival and for victory, relying on ingenuity, patience, and determination that others could not match. And when he turned to Mara, he praised her courage. But she simply shook her head and said her weapon should go to the next quiet recruit, the one who would be underestimated just as she had been, knowing that the legacy of human resilience, skill, and thoughtfulness would continue. And across the galaxy, whispers spread of the lone human who had faced impossible odds, who had climbed a living ship, fired one perfect shot, and changed the course of battle, proving once again that humans, though smaller in numbers and simpler in appearance compared to alien species, possessed a combination of patience, intelligence, and courage that made them a force no enemy could ignore, and that when the moment demanded, a single steady hand and a careful mind could achieve what entire fleets and advanced weapons could not, and that the story of Mara Hale, her quiet focus, and her single shot became a lesson repeated in academies, on training grounds, and in strategy rooms across the coalition. Never underestimate humans. Never dismiss the silent ones, and never think that a simple rifle and careful aim are powerless. For in the right hands, they could decide the fate of worlds, turn despair into triumph, and leave a mark that would echo across stars and generations, teaching the galaxy that patience, courage, and precision were as deadly as fire and fury, and that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's spirit could prevail, turning the quiet into legends and the improbable into history.